Oh, finally. Been looking for a spot to do this intro. The assassination that took place on Alexander Sasha Litvinenko. Of course, I remember it when it first happened back in 2006, but it was almost like, do you know what I mean? You hear about it, but you kind of don't sort of pick up on it. Of course, when the whole Ukraine thing started the beginning of this year in 2022, you know, when this whole thing happened in Ukraine, I sort of just, for some weird reason, wanted to know more about, I'm sorry to say, the whole Russian leader and, you know, all the sort of things behind him that he's done wrong and everything. And I managed to find a Channel 4 documentary about him and that, you know, about his whole life and everything that's gone on with him, you know what I mean? And of course, by the end of that, of course, they couldn't do something on him without touching on Alexander. And it was only then that it's sort of like, and that, do you know what I mean? Like something sort of clicked in me thinking, I want to know more about this. So you could say I've worn it out to death. Let's put it this way. I've got it on my phone so I can watch it any time I watch. I have watched extensively the Real Stories documentary that was done on Alexander that showed all the ins and outs on this whole case and that. And that is essentially kind of what no, I'm not copyrighting that or anything, but essentially, thanks to that, and essentially that's what this true crime documentary is. I'm going to go to all of the places where, you know, all of it was linked with him. It's related to him, and I'll give you all the facts and figures, and I'm going to put this together as a really decent, long documentary, because we've seen it as a documentary, but, you know, someone hasn't ever, done this sort of thing on YouTube, as far as I can tell, by actually going to all of these places. So, I hope that wasn't too long of an intro, guys. So I really hope you enjoy this as much as I am so going to look forward to actually seeing these places and filming it for you and me. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it. In November 1998, Alexander and several other FSB officers that he worked with publicly accused their superiors of ordering the assassination of Russian oligarch Boris Berezovsky. Alexander was later arrested the following March on charges of obscene authority of his position. He was acquitted the following year in November of 1999 and subsequently rearrested, but once again was dismissed in 2000. At this point, him and his family fled to the UK and asked literally at the airport terminal to be granted asylum in the UK, where he could work as a journalist, publish the books that he went on to write, and be a consultant for British Intelligence Service, MI6. While working in Lincolnshire, Litvinenko published 2 books with a friend of his, Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within, and Libyaski's Criminal Group. Within, he accused the Russian Secret Service of staging the 2,000 Russian apartment buildings that actually did take place late 1999. Apologies for that date correction. As acts of terrorism to bring Vladimir Putin to power. He also accused Putin of the ordering of the assassination of the Russian journalist Anna Pulskaya in 2006. I will flag up the actual spelling of that here. And all because of the fact that Alexander wanted to do the right thing and finally rid Russia of its corruption and of the fact that its leader wanted to carry on with that corruption and more power and everything. This is the reason why that it led to him basically in their eyes to be a traitor of the Russian state, and of course that is what led to him being targeted and unfortunately eventually being assassinated and killed by Polonium 210. Okay guys, we're starting here. This isn't actually the chronological order in a way to start and that, but this is where I think is the most natural place to start. This is University College Hospital, or more affectionately known as, it is a very famous hospital, UCH. This is the hospital that Alexander Litvinenko was transferred to on November 16th, 2006. He was transferred from this hospital. Barnet Hospital was his local hospital where he'd lived in Muswell Hill, and that, but was transferred to UCH because it was a more specialised hospital and that. Now, I don't know precisely where in this building he actually was geography-wise, but thanks to reading numerous books, I am aware that he was mostly in a sealed-off room in Ward 15 in the intensive care unit. That was so that they could monitor him a lot closely and all of this lot and that. Then on November 18th, after he had been saying to the doctors he believed he had been poisoned by thallium. Thallium is another poison that has been used by the Russian government and that. The two Metropolitan Police men came to see him in just after midnight on the 18th of November 2006, and he initially gave them his British pseudonym name, Edwin Carter, but also said to him that I am a former KGB FSB officer, Alexander Litvinenko. And he had told them that he was hoping to speak about someone that he had had dealings with when it came to MI6. This was his handler, Martin. But he didn't say that on the camera or the tape recorder for obvious reasons. But he said, you can reach that person that I don't want to talk about here at that long telephone number. So they called that number, and his handler, Martin, from MI6, came to the hospital and did confirm that this was Alexander Litvinenko, a former KGB spy, officer, and that. And the reason why I mention this part first is because I think that's where this all began and everything. So now we will go from University College Hospital to our next location, which is where Sasha used to meet his handler Martin. And can you believe it? It's actually somewhere on Piccadilly Circus. We've got a lot of locations in that long street, all side streets of it. So let's carry on. And in case you weren't aware, this is also the hospital that, in fact, Sasha did actually pass away in on the 23rd of November 2006. He did communicate with the police until then. And I waited until this point in the video, guys, because we're actually reaching the back of the building. And when I said that he was on Ward 15 in the intensive care unit. As you saw, I went into the hospital briefly, and I concurred from that lower part of the building, that's more the front end of the building that you saw first, that only goes up to floor 2. So I would call speculation, but it's a pretty good conjecture, that he was being Ward 15 on, on floor 15 as far as I know, as well as being Ward 15, but I don't know that for sure. I believe he was in the back of the building, the very tall section that you are seeing right now. So, yes. So, of course, that is, as you can imagine, a lot of things did happen in a very short space of time at UCH here. Of course, they didn't actually discover the polonium until literally hours before he died, and this was only luck because they took all of his samples from UCH and they sent them to Aldermaster. So, yes, that gives you an initial idea of what happened in UCH. But now let's go and see our certain location, which is a certain bookstore where he used to meet Martin on Piccadilly Circus. As you can see, guys, we are approaching Waterstones on Piccadilly Circus. Yes, I used the Itsu marker just a short while ago because we will be going back to that restaurant, and I wanted you to kind of see the very short distance that Alexander would have travelled when it comes to these locations on Piccadilly Circus. So yes, we are going in here because this is one of his prime locations. Weirdly enough, not when it comes to actually his death. This is actually the location of that. This lovely restaurant stroke bar, restaurant, cafe, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a bar and restaurant it's mostly called. This was where he used to meet his MI6 handler, Martin, and that. Yes, can you believe it? MI6 agents actually meet in coffee shops like this. And the reason why I've attached this to one of his locations is because, can you believe that Alexander was actually in this restaurant only the day before that he actually got poisoned? Yes. If you watch the documentary, which I will refer back to occasionally in this whole video, yes, he met his handler Martin in here on the 31st of October 2006 at about 4 p.m. Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think it was an interview or it was a book. I think it was an interview I've watched on YouTube. Apparently, Cafe Nero, but coffee shops in general tend to be quite popular when it comes to MI6 handlers. So, enjoy the scenery, guys. Take care. Now we're setting the scene for a couple of locations that are intermixed, guys. So keep with me and just stay with me when it comes to what I'm saying and what I'm showing you at the same time. We're focusing in on Piccadilly Circus because on the early afternoon of the 1st of November, Alexander travelled from his home in Muswell Hill, and he was meeting his first meeting with his Italian friend, Scaramella. He met him at Piccadilly Circus. Now, Marina had actually told him, please don't eat a lot because we're going to have a special dinner later tonight to celebrate the fact that it's our 6th anniversary of when we came to the UK, and of course we're British citizens. He met Scaramella here on Piccadilly Circus, and he did want to have some food. So they went to one of Alexander's favourite places, Itsu Sushi Bar on Piccadilly Circus, and that. Scaramella suggested Itsu, somewhere they could eat and talk quietly, and that. So they went down to Itsu. He wanted to talk to Alexander because he had some memos that suggested possible corruption in his country, and he wanted his opinion on it. It turns out that it wasn't actually anything of the sort, but Scaramella wanted to be sure on this. But we're targeting this because the reason why Scaramella for a while was actually a possible suspect when it came to Alexander's poisoning, because they found high levels in the second floor in Itsu's restaurant and they believe that it could have been Scaramella that have poisoned him because of how high the contamination of polonium-210 was when the police went to scan it, and that with hazmat suits or whatever. Because what happens is, if you've been handling polonium, you'd be surprised of how easily it actually can secrete through your sweat. So it doesn't matter how careful you are or not careful you are, you can easily, as soon as you've been handling it, you will transmit it. And it's like, as soon as you've touched it, as soon as you've put your hand down on something and all of that lot, you can leave a trace of it, of where you've been. That's the one good thing about polonium-210 only having a half-life in that respect. So they came to the Thistle Hotel, which is this hotel, even though it's been renamed the Claremont. I assume it must have changed sometime between 2007 and now. I'm not quite sure when it changed its name. And they came here because Scaramella was staying here, and that, to check if there was traces of polonium anywhere in his room or on his person himself, and that. But after a thorough look through his room and this hotel, they didn't find any traces of polonium-210 and that. So, as detectives asked in this whole investigation, if there wasn't any trace of it, what's the likelihood of him being involved? Very, very remote, if non-existent. But you may also ask, so why was Itsu restaurant contaminated? Well, it turns out that actually the table that Scaramella and Litvinenko actually sat at while they were having lunch on the 1st of November was actually a different table to the table that had the high levels of contamination on it. It was literally right next door to it. So detectives wondered, if Scaramella wasn't the target, then who on earth could it have been? Well, they went back to Alexander's amazing testimony when he was in hospital being interviewed by them. He had another meeting later that same day, on the day he died. Yes, he told police, so where did you go next? I went to the Millennium Hotel, which is now the Belmont Hotel, part of the Hilton group on Grosvenor Square. So follow me, guys, and I will show you where some of the streets that Alexander would have travelled from Piccadilly to the Grosvenor and inside that hotel. Now this is the big setup, guys. As they said, he went to the Millennium Hotel. Supposedly he was supposed to meet them about 4 o'clock. In fact, it was closer to between about 4:30 and maybe about 4:45. And that, for some reason, he was delayed or whatever. But let's set the scene. Lukavoy and Cofton were caught both on CCTV and that entering the hotel at around the 4 o'clock mark. And when we get inside the hotel, you may call me completely crazy, but I actually will show you inside the ladies' toilets. And the reason why I've done that is because they actually initially asked for where the toilets were, and they're caught on CCTV approaching the toilet, and traces of polonium were actually found in both of those toilets. So you can see they've already been handling it on more than probably one occasion by this point. For when Sasha actually gets to the hotel and that he meets Sasha in the lobby and he tells Alexander that he can only speak for about 10-15 minutes because he's off to a football match. Yes, that was the other reason why they did it on this date. It was the perfect cover because one of the Russian teams was playing Arsenal in the Champions League in 2006. So it was the perfect cover for why they were flying in, and they flew in, and they even had family members there that they later were to meet and then leave. So there is a bit of the whole setup, guys. The actual poisoning itself took place in the Pine Bar in the hotel. I don't actually go into the Pine Bar itself because I seriously was not dressed for such a seriously glamorous hotel, but also it was majorly busy. But I do show you the outside edge of the entrance to the Pine Bar, so you will get a glimpse of it, guys. But lastly, before I completely sign off for the moment and let you watch this footage, is the setup of how they actually poisoned him was that they'd order several drinks beforehand. They'd ordered gin, I think there was whiskey, and they'd also ordered several pots of green tea. And the waiter had brought them over before before Litvinenko had got there, and that. So by the time that Alexander had got there, the tea was already seriously getting very, very cold, which is why he actually said to the police, "I didn't like it. It was almost cold tea." But that was actually what they actually poured the polonium in, and because of it being only cold tea and there wasn't much left, he only drank about 3 or 4 mouthfuls, which we believe is actually partially what was one of the things that was almost his savior in a way, because the only reason they were able to detect the polonium is because it's really hard to detect, and it can take a while to detect in the body system and that. But because it had taken so long to get through, and by luck it had been sent to the right place at Aldermaster, they were able to detect it literally hours before Litvinenko died.
Good evening, guys. Excuse me quickly. When did this hotel actually change its name to from the Millennium Hotel, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
When did it change its name?
2 years ago.
Oh, really? Why was the name changed anyway? Was it new company took it over?
It's part of the Hilton Hotel.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, so that's the wine bar.
Yes, it is.
Oh, now my mum asked me to get a photo of this because she's always loved the look of this thing when she's come here. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Hello. So there you go, guys. Yes. Sorry that was in such a rush. I'm sorry I couldn't show you more into that time bar. It's just that it just looked way too exclusive, as I predicted it would be, to even go in there. I'm not even sure if I'm dressed to even go in somewhere like that. So, yes. So that, even though that's called Beltmore now, that was the Millennium Hotel where, of course, Alexander was poisoned. Take care, guys.
So after discovering all the traces of polonium in every place in the Millennium Hotel that Lukavoy and Cofton had been in, the toilets, presumably their hotel rooms, even one of the Lukavoy's own son actually got contamination on his jacket after he had shook hands with Litvinenko just as they were about to leave for the football game. So with this in mind, the detectives pretty thought they have got more than something to do with it. They thought they are definitely the prime candidates for this murder. 2 weeks prior, on the 16th of October 2006, Lukavoy and Cofton flew in on a BA flight to London. They checked in to this hotel that you can see now. But in 2006, this hotel was actually called the Shaftesbury Hotel. Must have changed its name since then, presumably, like so many of the other hotels. But the key thing about this occasion on October 16th is they may have checked into this hotel, but they first tried to actually poison Alexander on this trip at this location. Yes, 25 Grosvenor Street. Now, I can't remember all the details for this, but I believe this was the office
of Berezovsky, but I can't remember the name of the actual company. Yeah, they had a meeting with Alexander there, and the setup of it is, I've just found out, is that there was glasses of water all on the table that they were having their meeting at, and it turns out that there was polonium in the water because it actually spilled on the coffee table, and the contamination was absolutely awful. But Litvinenko never actually drank the water, but he did feel he was a little sick later that evening, so it's believed that he must have inhaled some of it, but it wasn't enough to kill him, particularly since of how robust he was. So after that, guys, they tried to poison him again, and guess where they managed to do it? So
That's right.
they actually, as you can see, they went to the sushi bar with Alexander after their meeting, and this is where even detectives don't actually know. They did try to poison him here at this location because there was serious contamination on this table. This was the table that they found the radiation on, and as I said earlier, it was another table down here where Scaramella, the Italian, sat with Alexander. But going back to the 16th and that, we don't know how they tried to poison him on this occasion. All we know is the contamination was all over the table and that. So unfortunately, it failed twice on one day and that, which is why Alexander lived. But slightly suspecting possibly that they had been contaminated with whatever it was they were using, they actually returned to this hotel and immediately checked out permanently of this hotel and moved to another one, claiming they didn't like this hotel, and then immediately left London the following day. And the reason why there is a trail here is because when the investigators went into this hotel and went to their room, they discovered there was actually radioactive contamination in the waste paper basket that once again was seriously contaminated with a really high scale. And traces of polonium were discovered thanks to the British authorities stopping that plane at Heathrow and checking it for contamination, and they discovered contamination right in their actual seats. And here's a little tidbit for you guys. If you want to read one of the books about Alexander Litvinenko, can I recommend A Very Expensive Poison by Luke Harding? And can you believe it? He used to actually work for the actual Guardian newspaper, and funny enough got almost caught up indirectly in the whole Litvinenko case. Luke was actually travelling on that very same flight and then got contacted by the NHS that you might have been contaminated, call NHS direct. But fortunately, he was fine. So Lukavoy flew back to London 9 days later on the 25th of October, and he checked in to this hotel, which is the Sheridan Park Lane Hotel. Now this is definitely another failed attempt in assassinating Alexander, because we know that he definitely had polonium with him, because this time around it actually got on the U-bend of the actual sink. He poured it down the sink on this occasion. Now we don't know why he didn't try to deploy it. The most logical reason we can find is wherever he was planning on meeting Sasha, we don't actually know that. We believe there might have been surveillance cameras and that
that would have detected him pouring the polonium into whatever he would have administered it in, versus why they finally did it in the Millennium Hotel, because the Pine Bar, can you believe, there was actually blind spots in the Pine Bar where the security cameras were not shown. And then Lukavoy, once again, talk about he must have caught up some air miles on this assassination. He flew back the following day and then flew back to London 2 days later with Coughton in hand. And then, of course, that was when they finally did the deed in the Millennium Hotel. One final thing, guys, that I didn't mention before is when I did say that they sent all of Alexander Litvinenko's samples off for testing to Aldermaster, which is the radioactive centre in the UK. If it wasn't for that luck and chance that they did that, and as I said, they sent it to the right place, they never would have discovered that it was polonium. But when they did get the results 24 hours later after they sent them off, they rang the Met Office and actually said, yes, we can confirm this definitely is polonium-210. And the startling thing they said is, he's dead. And the Met Office guy said, no, he's not dead. He's very poorly, but he's not dead. He's still hanging on. And they said, no, Clive, he's definitely dead. He took twice the legal limit of amount. And as a final tribute farewell to Alexander before we move on to the next section, yes, he fell in and out of consciousness on, I think it was either the last day or the last 2 days of his life. His heart was resuscitated 3 times in all over November 22nd and then into the 23rd. But on the November 23rd at 9:40 p.m. they couldn't resuscitate him again, and sadly he did pass away then. Unfortunately, Marina actually wasn't at the hospital when he died, so when she was told to come back to the hospital, the doctors did have to tell her and that. And their son Anatoly was also with them at the time. So at least she did get to say goodbye to him and give him one last kiss and that. Although, one other thing I'm not sure if you're aware of, not guys, when they did a thorough examination of everything and the risk to everyone, as far as we know, Marina is the only one who did receive a fairly substantial dose. Not enough to kill her, but she has been warned that she might have health problems in the future. So, but let's hope not. Hey. So, on that note, can I just say, rest in peace to Alexander Sasha Litvinenko, who passed away at University College Hospital on November 23rd, 2006. But by this time in the investigation, all that was mainly left was the most key thing to happen at this London hospital, the autopsy of Alexander Litvinenko. Now, for obvious reasons, I am not going to show you actual photographs of what an autopsy is like, because I think that is a step too far. But all I will say is of what I found out about this autopsy is Alexander was wrapped in no less than 5 body bags because of the radiation coming out. Remember, of course, they only found out about the radiation literally hours before he died. And then when the autopsy did happen 9 days after he died at this hospital in Whitehall. It has since been updated and modernised from this photograph that I'm showing you, but this is what it looked like at the time and that. And this has gone down in history as being called the most dangerous autopsy in existence. The two pathologists had to wear no less than 2 hazmat suits. All of their gloves and everything had to be tucked inside each other for absolutely no risk to them at all. And they had to breathe through oxygen masks while they very delicately and thoroughly examined him and did the autopsy that did determine that it definitely was polonium that was found in his tissues. So with that in mind, you can understand what also is leading up to and where I'm off to now, which is the grave of Alexander Litvinenko at Highgate Cemetery. I'm showing you this mosque because there was a bit of a confusion over Alexander Litvinenko's religion. Literally days before he died and before he was slipping in and out of consciousness, there has been reports to say that he had actually converted to Islam. So there was actually a service at the Regent Park Mosque on the day he died, but it's unclear of who attended that location and who didn't. But we believe that is where sort of the funeral service took place for Alexander. And then later on, you will see me showing you the actual location of where his memorial took place. I believe this is after the funeral, but I will show you that before, as it is where I started leading into Highgate Cemetery. So come along with me, guys.
Welcome to Highgate Cemetery, the final resting place of Alexander Sasha Litvinenko. Yes, I've done it in this order because I think this is where we should end, even though I have shown you where his memorial was afterwards beforehand. It just seemed better in geography to me, guys. So as you saw from the photographs, he was buried in a very heavy wooden coffin, but what you can't see, unless of course you can tell by the pallbearers, is of course, as you can imagine with the radiation, he was buried in a lead-lined coffin. That's the reason why he's got that many pallbearers carrying him in, and they were straining under the weight. That's the other reason why, other details about his funeral, he didn't have an open casket for obvious reasons, and that. So, and the other thing, I'm not sure if many people would be aware of this or not, is because of the radiation, he was actually buried in his grave at 12 feet deep, not the usual 6 feet, which is more traditional for between a double or a single grave, and that. And lastly, the other thing I thought you should want to know is Marina Litvinenko mentioned this in the documentary that I highly recommend that you all guys go and watch after this. And that she was told, now I'm interpreting this in two different ways, so this is just my opinion. She was actually told that if she ever wanted to move him, and that presumably if she ever wanted him in a different location or whatever, she wouldn't be allowed to move him for 30 years because that's how long the radiation would be there for. I'm also interpreting that in another way because I've often wondered if whether or not, does that also mean that she wouldn't be allowed to be buried with him until at least after 30 years? Fortunate for us, even though it was sad of how young Alexander was, the chances of Marina dying after 30 years, after all, it's been 16 years already since Alexander passed away. So if she ever did want to go in with him, so let's go and visit the final resting place of Alexander in Highgate West.
Hello guys, well I've got a moment to myself. You know, I've done a lot of graves on YouTube, and a few, you know, even before YouTube and that. And one thing you've never actually seen me get is like emotional or teary about seeing a grave, and I'm not crying, but I feel like, oh my god, you know what, there's been a grave that you've wanted to see for so long, and now I'm literally right in front of it. Yes, as you've seen, I've made it to Highgate Cemetery. But if there is ever a grave that I almost, literally, I'm not crying, but I feel so, like, choked up, but I also feel so honoured, the fact that I have finally actually made it here, because originally I didn't think I was going to get here until like the end of the year, because I thought I'm not going to have enough time to get here, blah, 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 and all of that lot. Yeah. Let me turn you around, guys, because I'm at the grave of Alexander Sasha Litvinenko.
Yeah, guys, one other thing I didn't actually touch on in case you were wondering, wait a minute, this grave is right in front of this pathway. No, this rose, is it rose bush or whatever this is? No, I'm not sure. No, it's not a rose bush. Might be a clematis or something. But no, this was planted when he was first, so, you know. Oh, here we go. This is where this grave ends. So he pretty much comes, so his headstone's almost like in the middle of it and that. Yeah. One last look. Goodbye, Alexander. Oh, I've just realised I've walked across this grave. That's bad of me. Right. At least this is easy to get down now. Yeah, you can never miss where his grave is because of this massive mausoleum. Oh, at least this is easier. Oh, it's a bit steep. God. Danger unsafe, keep away. I'm not sure if I'd want to scramble in them, that's for sure. It's definitely true what they say by Highgate. It's not only got a history, but it's got the best atmosphere of any cemetery. At least the one, of all the ones that I've been in, that's for sure.